I'm Cynthia Murphy, and I lead the Workforce Solutions team at Coastal Enterprises. We are a CDFI that is based in Maine. I think that there are two ways to think about this. I'm going to take a super practical approach, and I hope you ask lots of questions when we're done. So, the two ways to think about this, I think, are number one, these aren't necessarily in order, but number one, um, how the heck do you write this proposal? Right? It's intimidating. The NOFO itself is overwhelming. It takes a lot of reads, a lot of highlights, a lot of people kind of talking about what does this year's NOFO look like. The second thing is how the heck do you execute if you get the grant? Right. So I'm going to try to focus my comments and my remarks on that, and I'll try to flip back and forth between them and starting off with how do you position your community, right? So Brooklyn and Jerry did a great job about talking about the persistent poverty counties. Well, here in Maine, we don't have any persistent poverty counties. So that's a great thing. If you have them, it's a little bit easier to write your app, right? So I'll talk a little bit about the other perspective. I don't know if you've ever been to Maine. We have 1.1 million people who live in our whole state. A lot of people who've never been here think the whole state is rural. So we like to think we have a couple of urban areas. You might not think about that, but we are a really sparsely populated state. And many of you, as I understand it, are working in places where there are very few people per square mile. So thinking about the economy in places like this, many times our economies in the more rural parts of the country are lagging the state and lagging the nation. And so when you think about putting together your need for assistance, focus on that. If you have someone on your team who loves to research, get them going to find all of those great economic statistics and try to demonstrate how your state or your community compares to the state and the nation. So for GDP, for example, we really are horrible at GDP. Most years, the best we ever do is like the 46th position out of 50. Talk about the trends in GDP. Look at personal income. Compare if your personal income's growing in your community or in your state. Talk about how it might be growing less than the national personal income. Look at per capita. Look at worker productivity. We slipped to 48th position out of 50 there. Thinking about labor force participation, you heard Jerry and Brooklyn talk about outmigration. That's really common in rural areas that youth are leaving. Something important to think about there. I think that one of the um, one of the areas that we have been really successful at with our CED grants is looking at our legacy um, growth drivers. So in Maine, you can think about us as being a very natural state. We have derived so much income from our forestry sector, from our ag, and of course, fishing. And what's happened in many communities, and I'm going to guess this is happening in many of your more rural communities too, is that you have large anchor employers in these legacy heritage businesses. And when they leave, a town is devastated. So as you're looking for opportunities for the CED grant, think about those kind of smaller businesses that are starting that build on the culture of those heritage industries. So it might be in some of our communities that we have had large wood and paper mills that have shut through the years. We all know what's happened to local newspapers and to print magazines. And so that has meant the loss of jobs. Looking for industries that are building on that kind of work, but in a more innovative field. So, for example, one of our CED businesses was a mill that was taking wood shavings and making insulation out of it. So you have that kind of manufacturing. People were working in those jobs in those communities for decades. So they've got an interest and a passion for that, but it's a new and novel type of sector that can drive income and get people in the community really energized. I think that what you're looking for are businesses, as Jerry and Brooklyn were saying, that will create good jobs. And those good jobs, in my opinion, when we're looking for a CED opportunity, need to be jobs that someone who has a high school diploma or less can get. And how do you get them trained? Jerry talked about the workforce partnerships, super important to success here. But looking for a business that has a lot of jobs coming in that someone doesn't have to have a lot of skill for, that you can train people up, not just for that entry level position, but as Jerry and Brooklyn were saying, how do you position someone to be able to be promoted? How can they continue to learn skills, maybe become a supervisor, maybe move to a different function and earn a wage increase? Those are the businesses that are gold when you're trying to find a CED opportunity. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about unemployment and poverty and looking at those geographies first as a way of also finding businesses and sectors that you might want to focus on. So those places where there has been a large anchor employer who's shut, or where there has been some other unfortunate occurrence, and businesses that want to come in and capitalize on the fact that there are workers who are interested in new opportunities. I think the other piece that I would focus on is you might be able to tell a little bit from what I'm saying. I think finding the business first is going to make your process easier. When you find that business, we talked about the type of jobs that you're looking for. You also need to find a business that has at least the start of a business plan. You need a lot of data from this business to do well on this proposal. And if you're finding businesses that are not what we think of as shovel ready, they don't have a solid business plan, they may lack financial acumen, giving them that technical support up front a few months before you're doing your proposal. That's something that's really helped us get a business ready. We are finding, we've been fortunate to work with the CED program for decades, that we're ready here at CEI. We have to help the businesses get ready and help the communities get ready for that. So with that, I think I'll turn it back over to the OCS team.